Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver stories for the week ended July 29th, 2017. Rothschild Investment Corporation buys Bitcoin. Rothschild's entity buys shares in Bitcoin Investment Trust. Now there's some twists to that story, so stay tuned as we go through what exactly is happening with the Rothschilds and Bitcoin. Bitcoin Option Exchange wins approval from CFTC, so there will be Bitcoin derivatives coming soon. House Judiciary Committee, Republicans demand special counsel to investigate the lynch mob. SEC warns security laws may apply to initial coin offerings, and Chinese gold demand soars. We're going to go through each of those headlines, so this might take some time, so sit back and let's get to the top stories of the week. By the way, you'll notice I've added a Ledger Wallet banner ad. That is a new affiliate of Smaulgld. Ledger Wallet allows you to take your coins off of the exchanges and store them in what's called a hardware wallet, where you control your Bitcoin keys. It's quite simple to use, and this way, if there's any issue with the exchanges, for example, Coinbase not supporting Bitcoin Cash, or somehow the exchanges get hacked, or the government closes down an exchange for whatever reason and your Bitcoins end up in limbo, well, by putting them on a hardware wallet where you control the keys, you then have the ability to make sure that your Bitcoin are safe, or your other cryptocurrencies. Ledger supports Litecoin, it supports Ethereum, there's wallets there for Dash, and this way you can also trade from the ledger itself. All you have to do is just send the coins back to the exchange from which you bought them. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. Smaulgld gets a small commission if you do indeed buy a Ledger wallet to store your cryptocurrencies. All right, let's take a look. Top story of the week outside of the economic scene was the Republicans requested an investigation into former Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former FBI Director James Comey and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And their rationale is that, and it's really quite remarkable that the Republicans control the Congress and the Senate, and yet the Democrats managed to force special counsels to investigate Republican Trump on, and what they pointed out was that the investigation into Russia has been going on for a long time, and there's really scant evidence to support the investigation. Although they're not saying it shouldn't be done, they're just saying, look, here's what we have some blatant things that deal with the Clinton era when she was Secretary of State, the era when Comey was FBI director, and when Loretta Lynch was the Attorney General. And what we would like the Attorney General today, Sessions, and his Assistant Attorney General to do is to restore public confidence by appointing a special counsel to investigate the following things. Now remember, they fired James Comey for a number of things that sounded like he was either incompetent or he was obstructing justice. And also in Comey's testimony, he let loose some bombshells that Loretta Lynch herself had told him to mischaracterize the criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton. So this letter goes through, and you can read it. I've attached a link to it, to investigate Loretta Lynch directing Mr. Comey to mislead the American public on the Clinton investigation. They wanted to take a look at Hillary Clinton's, again, her mishandling of classified information. They wanted to look at how the FBI and the DOJ came to these decisions to give immunity deals to potential Clinton co-conspirators and really get nothing in return. They want to look at why the DOJ at the time failed to impanel a grand jury to investigate the mishandling of classified information by Hillary Clinton. They want to look into the Clinton Foundation. They want to look into the Clinton campaign or the Clinton Foundation's connections with Russia and the Ukraine. There's evidence there that there was things going on that have not been investigated. There was the uranium deal with Russia and the potential role that the Clinton Foundation and or Hillary Clinton together played in the approval of that sale of uranium one to the Russian company. There's the issue of the Bernie Sanders campaign. There's a whole host of issues that the Republicans would like their own attorney general and assistant attorney general to investigate. Now it's interesting, the attorney general Sessions has decided he's recused from even getting involved in the investigations on Russia. So I guess the Republicans are saying, why don't you investigate this other stuff? You're fully capable of doing so. And there are some serious potential issues here. There's the leaking of classified information, and the unmasking of U.S. persons' identity. There's also the issue that James Comey admitted he leaked information to a friend for the purpose of leaking it to the New York Times for the purpose of getting a special counsel, which they got. So in other words, the former FBI director was rewarded politically. That's what he wanted. He wanted a special counsel to investigate Trump, and he got it by basically leaking. So they wanted an investigation into that. Now, we'll see where all that goes. That I thought was a very interesting development. It's surprising. It highlights that the concept of conservative means, in my mind, they just like the way things are and they don't try to change things. And liberal and progressive means they're always on the offensive, always trying to change the world. And they managed to get their way. It's that approach why they are more successful politically than conservatives. And libertarians are even less successful because they try to stay out of politics. Many of them believe that voting is the wrong thing to do. So you allow the progressives to control the political process because they don't give up. They believe that that's their moral duty, is to continue to move forward, so to speak, in the political arena. All right, so let's take a look now at some of the other top stories. We'll get to those other stories in the headlines in a second. The gold closed last week at 1269. It was up 1.2%, and we're seeing some movement now. And silver closed last week at 16.74, and part of that's a reaction to the Federal Reserve not only not raising interest rates this past week, but also striking that, quote, dovish tone. Gold silver ratio, however, still remains above 75, and you can see it's been above 74 all month, although silver did have a slightly higher gain last week than gold. Please consider making a small donation if you do enjoy these reports. I do appreciate them. You can donate via Bitcoin, Litecoin. There's links below. You can donate via PayPal, or you can become a Smaulgld patron on Patreon. I do appreciate those donations. They are somewhat few and far between, but sometimes they are substantial. So thank you very much for those donations. Tweets of the week. This is just a point that wasn't really made about and it ties back to what I was talking about with Ledger. While the SEC did note that certain ICOs can be deemed to be securities and therefore the ICO needs to be registered, they also made the point that companies or exchanges selling those are not really allowed to. And my point is, they could shut the exchange down just for selling an ICO. They could be selling other cryptocurrencies and doing a business and trading and using their company as a platform, as exchange for other cryptocurrencies that haven't been deemed securities. But if they determine that there's an ICO that they're allowing to be traded, they could shut the exchange down. Now, Coinbase only has 3 coins that they trade. They trade Ethereum, Bitcoin, and Litecoin. So that's probably not going to happen to them. But some of the other exchanges where you might do your trading do trade in some of the ICOs. So you have to keep an eye on that. Here's just the point that no change. The committee decided to maintain the target rate of the federal funds rate at 1 to 1.4%. But what I'm always amused by is the SEC language. This was in the statement. The federal fund rate is likely to remain for some time below levels that are expected to prevail in the longer run. That tells you nothing. The fund rate is going to stay the same for some time. Some time means any time, and any time basically means you can't even define it. And then the Fed fund rate is going to remain below those levels than those that are expected by whom, in the longer run. That basically tells you absolutely nothing. You read into that whatever you want to read into it. I always say, I think anyone can run the Federal Reserve the way they do it. All you have to do is change interest rates or don't change interest rates, and make up a reason why you didn't do it or you're going to do it. And then every now and then you can decide to buy assets. It's unbelievable that they are in charge of it. They're not just the bank of last resort. I can understand that. They're supposedly in charge of running the economy, and this is how they do it. Here's an interesting story. EU explores account freezes to prevent runs at failing banks. Well, the way you prevent runs at failing banks is running the banks so that it can't fail, but that's not how they run the banks. But as I say, that is another reason why cryptocurrencies are on the rise, and why gold and silver are also attractive, because gold and silver cannot fail. They can't go bankrupt. So cryptocurrencies probably would never have come into existence but for the abuses of central banks. There's a cute looking koala over there. All right, let's get to the stories we covered. Why is there so much hype surrounding blockchain? I'm not going to go through this, but you can click on that link. That comes from the Royal Mint in the UK. It's not a bad article. You can check it out. Okay, Rothschild Investment Corporation invests in BTC per SEC. Now, a little twist to this story that gained a lot of attention. That story came from Cointelegraph, and everyone was excited or dismayed, however you want to look at it, that the Rothschilds were investing in Bitcoin. And well, the way they would invest in, and here's the link to that SEC filing that this gentleman, Brian Cohen, this is his Twitter handle, found and posted it, and then Cointelegraph posted an article on it. And they invested in Bitcoin Investment Trust, which is a tradable security on, I think it's the New York Stock Exchange. It's one of the major exchanges, and that's one way you can invest in Bitcoin without actually taking possession of it. It's kind of like a gold, you have those gold trusts where you invest like Sprott, physical gold. I don't know the ins and outs of it. You can click on this link here. They'll tell you what the Bitcoin Investment Trust is. But the point is, it's supposed to be a Bitcoin investment. However, before everyone gets too excited or too dismayed that the Rothschilds are investing in Bitcoin, we have to know which Rothschilds. So there's a 1995 article here. The American Rothschilds are not related to the European Rothschilds. This Rothschild Investment Corporation that bought the Bitcoin and filed its holdings with the SEC, that was founded in 1908. They are to be distinguished from the Rothschild Asset Management Company, which is a business unit of Rothschilds & Co., which was founded in the 18th century, which is the famous or notorious Rothschilds. And they're the ones who go way back to Meyer Rothschilds and the whole Rothschilds family. Now, the real Rothschilds, I don't know if one could be called the real Rothschilds or the more famous Rothschilds, according to their most recent filing, they have no interest in Bitcoin. But they do list mining companies, gold mining companies, Barrick, Newmont Mining, and Goldcorp. So when people say, or you'll hear, that the Rothschilds are buying Bitcoin, that's true. But it's the American Rothschilds, it's not the Rothschilds that everyone thinks of. And just keep that in mind. Okay, let's continue with the stories. As we mentioned, Bitcoin exchange wins approval from CFTC. You can read about that here in the Wall Street Journal. U.S. economic data, again, as I've been saying for, I guess, years, it's always tepid. Existing home sales, they're not bad, but they're nowhere near the levels that they were 10 years ago. Same with new home sales, but the prices certainly are much, much higher. Now, U.S. Mint sales update doesn't look like this month is going to be much of a month for American Gold Eagles. We still have Monday, the 31st, but to date, 11,500 American Gold Eagle 1 ounce coins sold, very few. Not bad. American Silver Eagles 2.2 million, but still nothing like the big months that we had in recent years. 2016 early in the year, 2015 all year, 2014 all year. Those are big years where it was not uncommon to do 4 or 5 million in American Silver Eagle sales, and also 40, 50, 60, 70, sometimes 100,000 in American Gold Eagle sales. So we're definitely still behind prior year's levels. Now, if you're interested in buying gold or silver, it's not investment advice to do so, but you can buy. You can compare pricing and shipping through the Smaulgld site or the links below at bgsc.com. Gold and Eagle Coins, SD Bullion, and Money Metals Exchange. Smaulgld gets a small commission if you do indeed buy. So if you're going to buy, please check out the Smaulgld links. You pay no more no less than if you visited the sites directly. So if you've already done your investment research and you're gonna buy gold or silver, and not investment advice for you to do so, but if you're going to do so, please consider doing so through the Smaulgld links. There's some junk silver right there, 90% silver coins. All right, now the SEC says ICOs may be subject to U.S. securities laws. I covered this twice. I thought it was important enough to cover twice. The big headline, and I'm not going to go through everything, but I'll give you the highlights, and you can please check out the videos that I've done on this. The big highlight was, or the big headline that everyone was talking about, is that the SEC said ICOs are securities. That's not what they said. They said that a particular ICO was a security. They said that whether something is a security would depend on the facts or circumstances. Now, the other twist was, and from that you could take that certain ICOs, if they're structured properly, may not be securities, and therefore if they're not securities, they don't need to be listed, and they're not subject to the SEC's oversight. But the other thing about the decision is they did say that this DAO ICO was indeed an offering of securities, but they said we're not going to do anything about it. We're just going to warn everybody. All they basically said was, look, the SEC has jurisdiction over securities, and ICOs may be securities, and this one in particular was a security, but we're not going to do anything about it. So I don't know what that means, but it basically means nothing as far as I could tell, because that was always the case. The SEC has, since 1933, has had jurisdiction to regulate securities offerings, and that hasn't changed. So it depends, and whether something is security has always depended on the facts and circumstances of the offering. So we'll have to see. They did not bring an action, though, even though they said that the DAO was a security. Another article we posted was, does consumer sentiment drive the gold price? There's many things that drive the gold price, but there is a correlation between consumer sentiment, according to the University of Michigan, and the price of gold. When the consumer sentiment is low, you can see the price is high, and as consumer sentiment rises, the price of gold falls. It's a correlation I noted. You could check it out. There's a blog post and a YouTube on it. Silver. China's first half silver imports climbed to highest level in nearly 7 years. And as we'll see in a second, gold demand in China is also pretty much off the charts. So China, India, gold sales, Indian gold imports, Indian silver imports, all up significantly. The price isn't. Just highlights the other point that the prices of gold and silver don't track the supply-demand dynamic. They basically track whatever happens on COMEX, and then whatever happens on COMEX is whatever, I guess, the bullion banks want to happen based on their trading patterns. Let's see what else happened during the week. Again, SEC offers Comey-esque explanation why no action was taken against the DAO. And that's my point, is they laid out the case that the DAO was indeed a security. And according to the SEC and according to the SEC laws, if it's a security, it has to be registered. It wasn't. So why didn't they take action? Well, I'll go into that in those two videos. India relaxes gold bond scheme to attract more investors. That's a disastrous gold monetization scheme where they try to get the citizens to hand over the gold to the government in exchange to get interest. It just hasn't gone anywhere. They're trying to change the rules to see if they get more people involved. The reason Indians buy gold is not so they can have a piece of paper from the government. The reason they buy gold is because they don't want the piece of paper from the government, the rupees. We saw what happened. They can just call them in at any point. What if they call in the bonds? They want the gold because they want the gold. So I don't know why they're messing around with this, but the Indian government thinks that they can they can up the ante enough, change the rules enough in the bond offering to get Indians to turn over their gold. Why is gold yellow? Spoiler alert. Well, you have to click on that link and find out. Silver, Fresnillo Gold. That is the largest silver mining company in the world. Production up 12%. So much for the declining production, skyrocketing demand story. Well, again, I like to report the facts as I know them. We hear in the alternative financial media constantly that silver, they're just not mining silver anymore. They're running out of silver, and that demand is off the charts. It's not true. At least mining companies aren't saying it's true. Last year, silver mining production was just a fraction of a percentage off of the year before, which was the strongest year in 15 years in terms of production. And silver demand was down in 2016, mostly because we're seeing a decline in electronics demand. Not because there's fewer electronics being made, but because they're smaller and there's less silver used in smaller electronics. And also because there was a big fall off and that continues to this day, in silver coin and bar demand. So the story of declining production and skyrocketing demand isn't true. Demand was very low in India all year up until a couple of months ago. That has picked up, and now we're seeing that it's picking up in China. So we're seeing a shift now. New home sales up to 610,000, but they expect 615,000. Remember, new home sales are much more expensive than existing homes. I think they're more of a, even though they're only about 10% of overall sales, I think they're a greater indicator of the health of the economy than existing home sales, because these are ones where you have to have the money to go out and buy a new home, and they're also at levels last seen 15-20 years ago, and the population is greater. So new home sales still, they're better than they were, but they're not very good in a historical context. Here's a story many people might have missed. Britain to scrap LIBOR benchmark from the end of 2021. So no more LIBOR. Now here's another one. India, many people don't realize the reason India is against gold is not only because it's competition for the rupee, but also because India has no domestic mining production. They have to import nearly all of their gold other than the gold that they can get that's recycled within the country. So that screws up their balance of trade, because a lot of gold gets imported and they don't export as much stuff. But they're now recommending, because a reduction in the gold import duty, because their balance of trade has improved. So that could be good news for Indian gold demand going forward. More U.S. economic data. GDP is 2.8. They're considering it for Q2. We'll see what happens. Here's what I was saying. India's falling trade deficit opens space to reduce gold import tax. Mining giants post red hot results in lukewarm gold market. So that's interesting too. We've been hearing that the miners are suffering because of the declining gold price. That's not true either. Maybe it was true, but it's not true lately. They've managed to figure out how to be profitable on the lower price. And, if the price starts to tick up, we could see a resurgence in gold mining and silver mining fortunes. Now, here is a very interesting thing from the Chinese Gold Association. I wouldn't say it's a shadowy organization, but it doesn't have an English language website. So I generally I can't investigate it directly, so I can only rely on reports that you see in Reuters or elsewhere. But here's what they reported. And this was in Bloomberg, same thing. Chinese gold demand for gold bars climbs by half. That's 50% on hunt for havens. This is the first half of 2017. They sold 158 metric tons of gold bars, 330 tons of jewelry, for a total of 542 tons of gold in the first half. These two numbers don't add up because that also includes industrial and some other uses. But here's the thing. If you look at bar sales, people don't know what metric tons are. Some people don't, but most people don't. I calculate that to be 4.9 million ounces. That's 5 million ounces. That is a massive amount of gold bars. The jewelry is even more ridiculous. 10 million ounces, and that 542 tons is 17 million ounces. That's just China. That's just the first half. Double that, and you're looking at 35 million ounces. You're looking at 1,000 tons, over 1,000 tons of gold. sold in China in a year. Now, it put that in contrast. When we talk about Russia being the largest buyer, central bank buyer of gold, they added 200 tons, just shy of 200 tons last year, 200 tons the year before. But look at this. Chinese people, 545 tons in a half a year. So basically in a year, if they buy over 1,000 tons, it's 5 times more than the Central Bank of Russia is adding to her reserves. Also, People's Bank of China, that's the Central Bank of China, lists just 1,842 tons of gold on its balance sheet. This is the point I make all the time. You have to distinguish China and the People's Bank of China. Every time I report the People's Bank of China's holdings, they say China's lying. No, it's obvious. I mean, Bullion Star covers this all the time, but they kind of also conflate the issue that somehow China is the People's Bank of China and People's Bank of China is China. They're not. This is gold demand in China, just in the physical side, over 1,000 tons a year on an annualized basis this year. But the People's Bank of China hasn't, according to their report, hasn't added any gold since last October. I believe that to be true. I believe that there is plenty of gold in China, plenty of gold in official hands. It's just not on the People's Bank of China's balance sheet. Here's a story we talked about earlier. House Judiciary demands special counsel to investigate Comey. Belt and Road Initiative beneficial to RMB internationalization report. And I think that's about it. No, I think we might have a little bit more here. Let's see. You got all these gold and silver ads there. No, that is it. So please remember to like this video if you did enjoy it. If you didn't enjoy it, well, you can thumb down it if you'd like. That's why those buttons are there. Also remember to subscribe to Smaulgld, subscribe to this channel, and don't forget, those donations are always much appreciated. Thank you very much.